Day 3 of quarantine, and we are making Cheburek. There are 3 steps: the dough, the meat filling, and then the frying of the product. So we are starting out with 1 kilogram of flour. That is Korean flour from the Korean market, no specific reason. 2 eggs to make everything sticky like your best content. Tripod hasn't arrived yet from Amazon, so I'm doing these eggs one-handed. This is just standard pastry dough. Wheat flour, 1 kilogram of wheat flour, 2 eggs, a cup and a half of water, a tablespoon of sugar, and a teaspoon of salt. Cheburek is greasy comfort food, the sort of thing you'd eat after a hard night out drinking. Popular in the former Soviet Union and the post-Soviet world. Chebureks are a Central Asian food. The word Cheburek comes from Turkish, Cheburek. Borek is a tough pastry in Turkish, and chig means raw. Chig is the same word as when you say shish kebab. That shish is the same word as Turkish chig. So it means a raw borek because we put raw meat inside and then we cook the whole thing together. When we throw it into the oil, the meat inside is raw. Chebureks were always around in the Soviet Union, but they became especially popular in the 1980s and 1990s when the Crimean Tatar ethnic minority started settling outside of just Crimea and brought Chebureks with them. At the same time with economic liberalization, there were people going out more, staying out at bars all night, so there was also more of a need for a cheap, greasy, filling, late-night drunk food. So really just keep kneading this, and if it's a little dry, add a little water. If it's watery, add a little flour. If it's not sticky enough, add some egg, but just knead that thing. After it's all kneaded, you'll want to set it aside for about half an hour to quote-unquote rest. And this doesn't have any yeast in it. There's another variation. Some people put yeast, but that's not what we're doing today. While the dough sits, we are starting on the filling. That is corn bran. The classic recipe calls for rice. Corn bran is a little more interesting, also a little bit healthier. You can usually find it in an Asian food store. It's a little bit, the texture and the taste are a little bit like kashamadaya in Russian food, which is cream of wheat, but this is actually corn, not wheat. So we just cook this in the microwave for 1 minute, and then we dump it in the bowl that has the meat. This is the bowl for the meat filling. The purists might be going apoplectic at this moment, but we're using soy sauce instead of salt. A little bit of a nod to the Central Asian origins, gives a little bit of a more interesting taste, but also soy sauce is already pre-dissolved, so that's nice. Here is cumin. And this cumin has these tiny, tiny, tiny holes. It's like, When you get to be my age, you might have some trouble getting your cumin out. Trouble, cumin twice. You need a PhD in operations research to get the powder out of this container. But it's worth it. It's all worth it because cumin has that Turkish Central Asian flavor thing to it. And old standby coriander. Why coriander? I don't know. Everybody puts coriander in everything. There's this cool fried garlic at the Chinese grocery store, so we're putting that in addition to the fresh garlic that will be there later. Ho hum, black pepper. That seems to be more of a nod to the Russian roots of the dish, but it's definitely required. Oh, and now the purists are going to have an absolute fit. Planters peanuts, mostly for texture. This is garlic cutting ASMR. We're also going to cut some onions. Note that I'm wearing a cut protection glove. It's important to chop the garlic and the onion into very small pieces because it's all about the surface area. The more surface area, the more flavor. Ah! Knocked my phone down. Can't wait for that camera and tripod to arrive. This is like the mowing scene in Anna Karenina, where Levin is mowing the grass and moving the scythe back and forth and drinking kvass with bits of grass in it. And he's the happiest he's ever been. And you're only wondering whether Tolstoy is getting paid by the word. Yeah, knocked over my phone again. So here's the filling bowl and the onions go inside. Of all the possible shapes in which frozen ground beef could be sold, why did they have to choose that one? That is 1 pound of ground beef into the bowl. Usually it's advised that it should be the fattiest ground beef you can find. And then you just knead this and mix this. This is going to be the filling for the Cheburek, and you're doing this while the dough is resting. It's supposed to rest for 30 minutes, they usually say. Now put the dough on a cutting board, and you're trying to make it into this sort of shape, just like the frozen beef shape. And the purpose of this shape is that you will be cutting the dough into about 8 to 10 even pieces. One of those pieces will be the dough for an individual Cheburek. Language tip. Is it Cheburek or Chebureki? Cheburek is the singular. Chebureki is the Russian plural. You know, in English you can say Cheburek, says the English plural, but the Russian plural is Chebureki. And then if you say Cheburekis, like some people say, that's just messed up. So each of these you're going to take and form into a roundish dough covering for one Cheburek. It can be round, or it can be oval, or it can be roundish. You can use a rolling pin, but keep in mind that the original Central Asian makers of the Chebureks probably use their hands because they are more or less hand-shaped and hand-sized pastry dough. Try to get it so it looks like a map of the Soviet Union. One-handed rolling pin technique, really waiting for that tripod to come in. And we put some meat in and we fold it over. It's kind of like an empanada. Just fold it over and press down to make sure that it's sealed to some extent. It doesn't matter if it's not tightly sealed. The oil will go inside anyway when it's in the frying pan. It's not like we're trying to achieve a watertight or oil-tight seal. Anyway, then press down on the edge with a fork like this. It just makes more of a seal and it makes it look nice like that. It's traditional. And again, that makes it look like an empanada. Oh yes, this is a big suka. Bigger in surface area is generally better as long as your frying pan can fit it. Just make sure that the meat is not too thick so that it does manage to cook through in the oil. Cooking with Glenn Gould. In Moscow, there's a chain of restaurants called Cheburek, which means Cheburek friendship, the friendship formed by eating chebureks together. The friendship forged from a greasy fried pastry. Classically, we're supposed to use sunflower oil, but that stuff's really bad for you. So here we're using canola oil, and we're using half a quart of canola oil in a 10-inch frying pan. When we cook, the oil will need to be at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 190 Celsius. It's quite specific because if we have the oil much hotter than that, then the outside pastry will burn too quickly and the meat inside won't have time to cook. But if we have the oil much cooler than that, then we won't really get a chance for the Maillard reaction and the browning of the outside pastry. All right, 370 ready to go. Be very careful when putting anything in hot oil because if this stuff splashes, it's very dangerous. But here it is, our first Cheburek is frying away. It's good to have a tool like this basket spatula contraption from the Korean market to be flipping things in hot oil. Tongs are also very helpful. Most helpful of all, of course, is not having to be holding your phone with your left hand. Ой, какой сам красивый. See that golden brown? We're on our way to Cheburek heaven. Aren't you lonely there, Mr. Cheburek? Don't you need a friend? Союз нерушимый, Республик свободных, сплотила навеки великая Русь. So that's it. We're pretty much done. You should put these out to degrease, maybe on a paper towel, then serve them preferably with sour cream or mayonnaise, and you're all set. Вот, the finished product, Чебурек. Blin almost forgot the mayonnaise.